Good afternoon, everybody. And I know it's lunchtime, and I can see the hungry eyes and faces looking at us. We'll try very hard to wrap up within 35 minutes. And I'm very privileged to have a big panel with me. I mean, some of them have not come, but I think let's give a big hand to each and every panelist here, because clapping is very important. The clap is very soft. It gives you a lot of energy. So I think a bigger clap will be better. You know, this is something as an educationist I've learned. You have to blow your own trumpets. Jokes aside, it's a very interesting topic. The topic is setting up Indian schools in international markets and vice versa, and sharing best practices in global education and investment opportunities. Since we have just met the panelists 5-10 minutes back, so the way I'll be moderating the session, I would request every panelist to take 2-3 minutes and talk about, maybe we can begin with setting up Indian schools in the international markets and vice versa. What are your views? What I would really like to know is giving some actual tips to the people here so they have a takeaway, how and why, how can they do it, setting up schools abroad and getting it. Just a little bit before I hand over the mic to the first panelist, when an international school opens in India, it fills up very fast. You have these various portals because it's admissions time and you keep finding which is the best board, what is it. We really need to reflect how as an Indian education system, how can we make inroads into an international system? Why we are only reaching till Middle East, why not beyond that? So I think that is something I would really like to know from the panelists. What are your views on that? So may I begin with you, sir?
Thank you. And thank you for giving me this opportunity. The topic is, how to set up international schools either in India or set up Indian schools abroad. So I will like to focus on the Indian schools abroad rather than setting up international schools in India. Precisely for the reason that if we look at the history of India and say probably go about 3,000 years back or 4,000 years back, India was the seat of knowledge and world over people used to come to India to probably learn. And today, though is many occasion I have heard that there is a lot of deterioration in the Indian schooling system, still I feel if you look at most of the top-notch management institutions or colleges of the world, of the globe, those are led by Indians who have studied from the Indian schooling system. So still, that legacy is there. Second, if you look at the major global companies, talk of Microsoft, talk of Google, talk of Pepsi, by Indians, and again, people who have gone through this Indian schooling system. So we have our roots strong and we have our culture strong, and if the culture is there, it can go on and on and on. The question is why Indian schools are not going beyond communities where there are Indians. That's probably because the lack of entrepreneurship that we have, perhaps for the lack of financial strength and resources that we have. Because I feel if we start exploring in Indian schools abroad and take our culture, our value base, our spiritual education, which is the core of India, I do not have any doubts in my mind that we will far excel, because it's not only technology which will probably bring in education. In the world, nothing and no technology can replace a teacher. If you close your eyes and think, it will be after your parents, definitely a teacher who have made an impact in our life, and you'll always remember the teacher. And that's what we learn from India. And I feel this core value we should take abroad and start establishing top-notch Indian schools abroad.
Thank you so much, and I definitely agree that our education system is one of the best. My focus is more because now what, Racquel, we just had a chat 5 minutes back. What is happening is I feel there is a gap in what is the demand? What are the people looking for abroad? See, we must not forget, run from the reality that our education system is more focused on theory, less on practical experiences. Of course, we have a couple of schools, I would say 20% schools where we are trying experiential learning. We talk of PBL, we talk of everything. But what about the large number of schools? Is it really happening? Isn't it the gap comes because of the expectations of the society and what they really want and what are we giving them? So how do we bridge that?
Thanks, Shalini. So I'd like to add three different perspectives because I live in Melbourne. I'm obviously of Indian origins, but I've been working in international education for about 23 years now. 11 of them were in India and the other half in other countries, which include the Middle East, South Asia, and currently based in Australia. So as I concur with Shalini that yes, I think we have to look at the market dynamics. Though K to 12, there is a huge demand all over the world. The way countries like Australia, New Zealand work and the demand there is very, very different from a country like, say, Singapore, Malaysia, or even in the Middle East. So to give you some real examples, like in Australia, other than a cultural group like Bhavans, which has a center in Sydney, trying to promote the cultural heritage aspect of it, there are no Indian schools in the whole of Australia at all, or New Zealand for that matter. Why is that? I mean, there is a large Indian diaspora, and in Melbourne there are more than 200,000 Indians in Melbourne, but still no Indian schools there. So even when we moved to Melbourne, I was looking to see if I can at least expose my daughter to, say, Indian languages or Indian dance to start with. But that wasn't even an option. Even maybe an Indian school could have collaborated with an Australian school to offer maybe that aspect of it, but that wasn't the case. We looked at whether something like that was available digitally online, and even that was not available. So she ended up actually taking Mandarin as her second language. So therefore, she's very proficient in, in Mandarin and very culturally competent as well. But sadly, she does not speak any Indian languages, which as a parent, that was my aspiration, that we did not, just because we are living in a different country, that we lose our identity or lack of connection back to our roots and our value system. But so that was, as a parent, an aspiration. But the market dynamics work differently, so we just ended up going with this, you know, a good school, which provided overall development. Now, if you look at, I work with educators around the world, and I think one of the most pressing or top of mind pain point or critical issue is looking at the relevance of schools itself in the 21st century and moving ahead. What is the core outcome of education? It's not necessarily the boards that we are affiliated to, or maybe the infrastructure, the brick and mortar itself. Maybe the schools of the future might look quite different. There might be a blended system. I know in Australia there's a lot of collaborative teaching. So again, in my daughter's school, they offer Japanese as a language now, only through collaborative teaching with their sister school. And the timetables are synchronized in such a way, and they use technology very creatively, where the Japanese teacher is based in Tokyo, but she's still teaching a bunch of kids in Melbourne. So maybe we've got to look at such creative partnerships in countries like Australia, or even in Singapore, where the government and the expectations of industry is how do you actually prepare young people for future success in the context of a very rapidly changing world of work. So what are the knowledge, skills, values, attributes, and attitude that can be shaped in school to lay the foundation for a future? So, for example, agility, I think, is a very, very important skill. You can't, I mean, people need to know how to adapt to change, how to be resilient, a lot of the social emotional learning, which I think will be more important than just academic success. So are we actually offering this as part of the curriculum, the way we deliver, the way we assess? What is the vision and mission of the school? What is your growth and expansion strategy? I think we've got to first have an in-depth understanding of, as a school, who we are, what is our identity, what is our aspiration, our vision, mission, what is our goals, what we want to achieve, and then look at which market to go to. And do some market research to see what is the need in that market, what are the legislative frameworks, what are the expectations of the community there, how do you integrate into the community? And again, I find that very different from the Middle East. So in Australia and New Zealand, it's all about cultural inclusion. So you can't have a school which is only for people of a certain nationality, and which is again very different. So I guess the tips or advice will be first to look at the core competencies of the school itself, the identity of the school, and then decide, you know, which is the best geography that you want to work in, and also how to access good quality teachers. So in Australia, that wouldn't be a challenge. You've got a very highly regulated licensing regime in every state. So accessing the right people wouldn't be a challenge, and you don't have to necessarily import talent from India. Whereas that would be a key consideration if you're going into the Middle East. So there are, I mean, it's quite a complex topic, and I mean, 3 minutes wouldn't be justice, but that's my time.
So I'm a bad teacher, I'll ring the bell. Yeah, as you said, I don't know why in every conference everybody says poor quality of teachers, poor quality of teachers. Nobody is bad. I think it's more about poor quality of leaders. You give any teacher, if a leader is good, the leader should be able to train like any organization. So moving on further, I would really like to know, like she spoke about, the person should be aware of the kind of market and teachers and taking into account. We are all going global, and there was another question in that about how do we build a unique curriculum? What is a unique curriculum, and what are your views on that? Because if we want to look at globally, then we need to have a curriculum which is really, truly unique. So what do you think about that?
Thank you. Well, I look at the countries that I visited, and I've had the opportunity to work with directorates and governments, particularly in the Middle East, North Africa, South Africa, not so much European, and of course I'm from the US, so I know that education system. But looking at the opportunity of what's happening in the Middle East, their eyes are focused on what's happening in India. You see them, you see UAE, you see North Africa nations. We have international visitors here. India is a tremendous incubator of education because of the diversity, different types, not only religion, but also language. So you can have strictly a US, a Western, or a British kind of model. One distinguishing factor that I see when these educators ask me, and even schools in India, and visit in Haryana and UP, and they say, how do we distinguish ourselves? How do we prepare our students for the future. It isn't strictly scores-based. The things that everyone knows that every parent wants to have top scores. And we know that there's successes and failures in that. Schools have to thrive. It costs money to operate and have good teachers and invest in those teachers. But also the life skills of the children. You mentioned social emotional learning. Schools that I have seen that invest in that use that as a marketing tool to distinguish that their students will be better connected to their community and be better behaved, fewer incidents in terms of bullying, gender problems, rage, and they can focus better on the things that are important, that are based in academic performance, certainly, better scores, behaving better, getting along better, respect, compassion, and understanding emotions, teaching these things, these core values, they all help into these life skills. So my tip would be, if you're looking to distinguish your school, whether you're currently existing or you're looking to expand, that social emotional learning and happiness curriculums, mindfulness, gratitude, connectedness are all worthwhile investments. They don't take away from the academics, they contribute to, and they distinguish you globally. And a lot of that is happening right here in Delhi, of course, with the happiness program. So you should be very proud of that initiative. I am. And I also wanted to leave you with one other tip that I find common is that all of these schools internationally, they have more in common than they do different, right? But every country, like the problems that a school system in Argentina has, or in Venezuela, or the United States, or in India, north, south, east, or west, are unique. So you have to understand that market and those challenges, and what you're going to face, and you can't bring in just simply one copy and plop it down and franchise it and expect that it's going to be successful. The last tip, I'll tell you about an experience that I learned in Dubai at the Global Education Skills and Forum Summit, which GEMS is a big part of. And I was going to say, if you're looking for resources on how to, internationally, the Varkey Foundation is certainly a wonderful foundation, originating out of India, based in the UK, certainly a great support of the GEMS framework, understanding your framework. But while I was at this summit in Dubai back in February, I was coming down from my hotel room, which was only on the second floor of the Atlantis Palm, which is quite glamorous. And the door opened, and there were probably 1,000 people outside the elevator. There was no way for me to get out. And so pushing in was this very beautiful person who I recognized as Priyanka Chopra. Well, okay, I know a little bit something about. So she squeezed in with her bodyguards and to keep all of her fans out, and I thought, well, I'm in the elevator with Priyanka Chopra. What do you say? Something wonderful. But she said something to me, it's like, who are you and what are you doing here? And I explained that what I'm doing is I've been spending most of my time working in schools and sitting down on the floor with children in the class and understanding whether they have a mat, a desk, or the best infrastructure, coming down there and listening to them, talking to them, whether you speak Hindi, whether you can speak Arabic or Spanish, you can communicate. You can communicate through happiness and understanding and listening. And so she said, tell me how I can help you. And I said, well, tell me something that changed your life. And she said, my teacher. A teacher told me I could be anything I wanted to be, but be the best. And that same teacher said, and build the new India, build the next new India. So you can do that. That's her message to me. I'm sharing that with you. So there are no limits, there are few rules, and there are extraordinary opportunities. So build it, whether it's in India, in the Middle East, in Asia, Australia, or even in the US. You can build it, and you can profit from it, and you can also give back. Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much. Didn't you click a selfie with Priyanka? Anyway, so 2 points.
I took a selfie.
2 points I'd like to, before I move on to you, because you have a chain of schools in Chandigarh, and definitely, so I want to share this joke. So, because you said about happiness curriculum, and happiness curriculum we are also incorporating in our schools, and I'm very proud because as a teacher, it's very important to be happy. If you're not happy, you can't do anything. So there's this guy who has got around 20% in grade 10th, and he's crying. So somebody comes, the mother takes him to a priest. So he says, don't worry, because the people who get 90% and above become CEOs, and the people who get 50 to 70%, they become the business people, the corporate world, so they control the CEOs. The people who get lower than that, that is like 40 to 50, they become politicians, they control the corporates. And the people who get below that become babas, they control the entire world. So there's nothing to worry. So moving on to you, I wanted to understand, you have because I'm sure there are people who want to know. So in Chandigarh, if you were to get an international curriculum there,
Right.
how do you think it will be, I'm sure?
Hello?
Yeah.
I'm audible? Well, thank you. So first I'll say that it's wonderful to be over here at the World Education Summit. I've been coming here for the last few years. I think this is my 5th or 6th visit. So the answer to your question is in one word: change. And there's a quote that I'll share right now, which isn't an educational quote. So please don't share this with your kids and plus your students back at school. So if you've heard of Bill Murray, who's an actor based in the US. So what he says about change, and if I'm right, he paraphrased this quote as well. I don't know where he took it from, but then I read it on his Twitter account. He said that sometimes you have to make people change by punching them in the face with the chair. So I'm happy to see that India is changing constantly, and I think that change is the only constant in India, and that's why summits like the World Education Summit are held, because it gives us a chance to learn new things and also change as well. But then talking about the change in the current framework, I think we have to understand that why is India being recognized the world over? What is it that we're doing? Of course, I think the first and the foremost thing that's recognized about our country is our culture. I think that we export our culture, and plus we've been fairly successful in the past few years of making sure that Indian culture has reached various parts of the world. So yes, we are recognized for our culture and of course our food, and Shah Rukh Khan, if I'm right. I think now it's Priyanka Chopra. But there's also one other thing that we're recognized for, it's just a nationalist stance that I'll take. So, so if I've got some representation from political parties over here, please do take videos of this and share it. So the national stand, so the stance that I'll take over here, that we are the fastest growing economy in the world in terms of our growth rate, and we are one of the biggest economic players in the world. And recently, our GDP has doubled, and we're the fastest country to double the GDP in a short period of time. India is also being recognized for the kind of work that we're doing, of course, in terms of industries. But there's one thing which we aren't recognized for, and I think it makes sense to talk about that here. That's our education system. Yes, our education system has produced CEOs and sports stars, like my panelist over there on the right also said as well. But our education system isn't one of the best in the world, and there are various reasons why it isn't actually. Where our education system wasn't actually made for the current for the current crop of Indians. It's an archaic education system which was introduced around 200 years ago, and it hasn't even changed since. So that's a fact, of course. I mean, plus our education system is failing, and there are various reasons due to which it is failing, of course. And I'll say it boldly over here. Yes, it is failing. We have to revamp our education system, and I think the way forward over here is by partnering with education bodies from different parts of the world, because there is a hunger for quality education in India as well, which is evident from the international schools which have come to us over the last few years. But I think the way forward is to partner with education bodies from different parts of the world, come up with a syllabus which is molded and crafted for the current generation of students. Focus lesser on rote learning, of course. I think that's one issue that we'll all agree on. But come up with pedagogies which don't only teach our students what to learn, but how to learn. It's important because our whole educational focus on India is to, in India is to score well in your 10th and plus your plus 2 exams. That's the whole focus. No one absolutely bothers about what a child will learn in, let's say, the first class or the second class or the third class. All about, okay, you have to learn this because you'll get good marks in class 10th and plus 2, and then you'll get into a college. A wonderful one. But what we're seeing right now, which is also based on what you just shared about the marks as well, is that the toppers of our education system aren't as successful in life as they should be. So if you've scored 100 in, let's say, accounting in the plus 2 board exams, that doesn't make you the top entrepreneur in the world, because you lack the skill set which is required to be successful in the global environment. So for India to be a superpower, and for our education system to be recognized just like our culture is, and just like our food is, and just like our dance moves are, and just like our films are, I think it's time to change our education system, and I think it's forums like this which are the first step towards that goal. But it has to change, and it has to change soon.
Hello. Can you hear me? Yeah. So thanks. Yeah, I understand the marks, but I think we need to reflect. I think we ourselves are giving importance to marks. So when the results come out, you see on all social media, every school flaunting, so-and-so kid got 90%. And I wrote a big post that I salute the kids who got 50 to 70%, because the world is made up of them. And I'm very proud of them. So I think it is very important for us to change. You can't change the world, as Gandhi said, if you don't change yourself. Yeah, so we need to admit every kid, just like you go to a doctor, you don't say, he doesn't take a test. Is that the bell for me? Okay. You don't go to a doctor and say that I'm dying and he says, I'll take a test and then decide. The same way as a school, you should be ready to admit everybody and let them follow their heart. So I would like you to know your views about how, continuation with what he spoke about the marks.
See, I was also thinking when I got to know that we have to speak on international uh, setting up schools in India, I mean Indian schools in international platform. And as he spoke that we have to partner with the international schools before we are going on international platform, because in India there are so many cities and in rural areas we need, I mean if I count literacy rate in India it's 74% and in Delhi itself it's 84%. So first we have to see how we can improve the education system in our India first, and it will be good if we can partner with good countries and share their best practices and education system, so that we can do something good for our village goer students, because in our villages there are schools but students are not there because the motivation factor is not there, or maybe the teachers are not focusing what basically they supposed to do. So we can't leave everything on government, we have to work for the betterment of the society. It is very easy to sitting in the NCR region and running a school, but if we if we have to think about dimension or expansion of our Indian schools in international platform or in any part of the world, better to improve our literacy rate first. Forget about the marks. First, we have to see that literacy rate should be at least above 90%, so that other part of world will also keep an eye on us, that if India is doing something good, because today in 2018, when I was studying, I mean, I'm talking about 1996, when I was in grade 12. Since then, I am listening that there will be one day when India will be 100% literacy rate. But till now, it's 2018, and it's been 20 years or more than that. Still, we are struggling to be improve our literacy rate, and even in capital of India, we have only 84%. So I strongly agree with him. First, we have to see the best part of countries who are doing better in the education system and partner with them and share their best practices. And we have to think about our village goer students, slums, and the schools. Even in NCR in Ghaziabad itself, I am from Ghaziabad. In Ghaziabad itself, there is two parts of Ghaziabad, where the elite schools are working and normal schools are working. So schools itself, they are not ready to share their best practices with the neighborhood schools, because they think that they can, this is their USP, how can they share? But I think if we are in a school industry or in education system, we are just because for the betterment of the society, not only making money. So I believe in this only. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And of course, it is teach one, each one. And I think most important, which I always feel we are doing it, as a school, adopt the slum kids. Just call them in the afternoon. There are so many people who are ready to volunteer. And I think if every school adopts a slum, what you're talking about, 100% literacy, is not a
sorry
dream.
to interrupt you. I am the member of Robin Hood Army. In all part of world, there is an RHA, Robin Hood Army. So I supposed to go on Saturday and Sunday for academic drive, and I used to visit slums and teach the students, and we are going for food drives as well, wherever the waste food is there. We used to distribute that also. And when we are going for academic drives, there is a connection with the students. Then only parents are trusting on us, and then we can take them for other activities. And even whenever there is any event in my school, I used to call them also.
Thank you. That's a really good. So I don't have a time, and I forgot to carry my mobile. I don't know, but we have you, so don't really hit me. I am giving you 5 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, so what are your views after hearing everybody? I would like to know that.
See, I'd like to start off with a small story. We've all heard about Google, right? So it all started off with two people. And those two people, when they made that search engine software, and they wanted to sell that product, and not everybody was ready to buy that product, because that time was an information age, not the search age. So major part of the world was trying to gather information, okay, only the information storage. But these two people started off with search for the information, not getting sold out anywhere. So they met this gentleman who was supposed to be the professor, called Professor Botwani, an Indian mind. And Sindhi Bhai, okay. So this Professor Botwani told them that, why are you selling your product? Why don't you make your own company? Don't give it to others. You have a product, you can sell it, make your own company. And they started off with the name Gurukul. It was not Google. I mean, this is a story which I heard a few days back. It was G-O-O-G-O-L-E, Gurukul, which means the largest number ever possible. And when they started off in the journey to get it registered and get some donation or get some money, so they met somebody, gave them a check of 1.2 billion or somewhere, but unfortunately he wrote Google instead of Gurukul. Okay. Now, the point that I'm trying to bring here is, they started off with this company called Google. Initially, Google were not supposed to be such a big company, but it all started off from one visionary, one wisdom, which somebody gave them, and then they started off. So one small story turned out to be a big story now. Wisdom is very important, and that's what Indian education system is known for. I heard Sir talking about 40,000 years ago, or maybe 4,000 years ago, Nalanda University and other universities. Yes, India is known for culture, India is known for values, India is known for wisdom. Now, when Indian education system thrives on these values, why don't we distribute it to others? Now, Nalanda, etc. universities were in India where people were coming here to India. Now, why not we go out as well? Why not distribute knowledge? Somebody said, विद्या बांटने से बढ़ती है. अभी थोड़ी देर पहले मैंने सुना. तो क्यों नहीं बढ़ाएं इस विद्या को बांटने से? So that is my first point. And you know, it is in our DNA. Indian advice too much. You know, and in India, free advice is freely available. Anyways, so in our genes there is a you know the passion to give up, to give to others. And when Indian education system thrives on values, morals, etc., and when it combines with the technology that the Western countries or the international world has, when vision combines with power, it yields results. Now, only power without a vision will not yield anything. So why not give that vision to the power? So my answer to that question would be, why not setting up Indian schools abroad? Why not? When we have the vision, we have the culture, we know how to do it. My only piece of advice would be, get the context right. That is very important. Bringing on everything from India to there without knowing the context, as ma'am said, Australia you get teachers, or some other place you get something else. Get the context right, that's it. If you get the context right, get the technology in, understand the nuances, and that's what Indians are best for. You know, they get to know things very easily and very early. I think why not? So that I think that would be my answer to that.
Thank you so much, and I really would like to thank each of the panelists. And yeah, I agree with you. Indian education system is actually one of the best. And if you go back to the old times, we taught all the skills which you were talking about in our, classrooms. It's just that in between, we have just drifted away and we have got confused. We really need to be, as he said, that we need to be very proud of what we have. We need to have our clarity in our own minds. Are we proud of our system? Are we ready to take it forward? I think then the world is ours. And I would like to thank everybody, and thank you also. Sorry if we took extra time, but thank you all so much. Thank you.